Imagine yourself on a tropical island, the sea splashing gently against the beach, a cool breeze complementing the baking heat as you lie on the golden sand, sheltered by beautiful palm trees. Are you relaxed? Well, don't be, because this isn't a meditation tape. You just imagine Jeffrey Epstein's island, you disgusting pervert. Yes, you just imagined yourself getting all comfy and warm and EP in the nonce capital of the world, and you had the audacity to enjoy it. You should be ashamed of yourself. But let's be honest, if you were there in person, odds are you probably wouldn't be. Ashamed, that is, because it appears that none of the people we have on record visiting Epstein Island seem to think they should be held to account at all. The only people speaking up are the victims of the horrific goings-on in Little St. James Island. And frankly, the fact that any of them got a hearing at all is kind of amazing, because for decades, the media would either ignore or smear the Epstein crime ring whistleblowers, especially if they're victims. And they'd get a massive monetary settlement out of court to shut up about the whole affair. There is perhaps no other whistleblower, however, who got as much of a bad go around in the press as the subject of this video. And that's for a very specific reason.
Transgender for everybody transgender.
I don't know why I'm being coy. You've seen the title of this video. You know why she was dragged through the mud by the press by now. The thing is, this victim blaming of Jeffrey Epstein's victims worked. And it worked for a long time. Because if there's anything that the mainstream media takes less seriously than allegations against their rich friends they need to keep on side for access to big stories, it's testimony from women who've been the victim of male violence. And that goes quadruply so if they're the kind of woman the press doesn't acknowledge even exists in the first place.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Yes, despite the wishes of Donald Trump, the world is still, and increasingly, talking about disgraced financier and Mr. Nonce Worldwide, Jeffrey Edward Epstein.
Mr. Worldwide.
And while the information revealed so far about the vast and terrifying network of the rich and powerful in this man's tangled web has mainly been without consequence for the powerful figures in question associated with this man, the public knowledge of their crimes has at least tainted their reputation somewhat, even if the consequences are far from what you would expect given what they have done. And that lack of consequences does genuinely sting, even sitting over here in the UK. Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, may have been stripped of his titles, but he's not yet in jail, and probably will never be, for what he did to the late Virginia Giuffre, and however many other girls there were who have yet to come forward or name him explicitly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating, because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, yes, I didn't sweat at the time.
Peter Mandelson is still a lord, a permanent unelected legislator in the UK, and the worst that happened to him was that he was stripped of his dream job as ambassador to the United States, a job given to him by Keir Starmer, who already knew about, and upon hiring Mandelson was warned by staff about, the scale of Mandelson's involvement with Epstein.
When Peter Mandelson was appointed, the vetting took place and they knew about his relationship with Epstein.
Fortunately for Peter Mandelson, before Epstein's birthday book was released, with its pages of love and admiration for Mandelson's favourite paedophile written in Mandelson's own hand, the British establishment had chosen to simply ignore everything we already knew about Mandelson's close association with Epstein. Mandelson's protege, Morgan McSweeney, basically runs the country, as Starmer's top advisor. Mandelson got to choose his own position in the government. He was allegedly involved in picking candidates and selecting policy, and presented election coverage in 2024 on live TV, as if he wasn't essentially acting as the Member of Parliament for Little St. James's Island.
Newly released files from a book celebrating Epstein's 50th birthday were published in the States. They contained photographs of the pair, with notes allegedly written by Lord Mandelson.
Once upon a time, an intelligent, sharp-witted man they call Mysterious parachuted into my life. You would spend many hours just waiting for him to turn up. And often, no sooner were you getting used to having him around that you would suddenly be alone. Again, leaving you with some interesting friends to entertain instead. Or some dogs to keep you company. He wasn't always so keen on them. But then he would parachute back in. Very occasionally, taking you by surprise in some far-off places. Or in one of his glorious homes he likes to share with his friends. Yum yum. But wherever he is in the world, he remains my best pal. Happy birthday, Jeffrey. We love you. The most recently released set of documents implicate even more people. Obviously, Donald Trump is implicated, but that's something we've pretty much known since day one. But there are people in there who you would most expect, and those you might least expect. From Noam Chomsky to British Nazi, Elon Musk's favourite Englishman, and man currently doing a tour of Israel, presumably the only country racist enough for his liking, Stephen Tommy Robinson Yaxley Lennon.
Whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die.
That's right. Tommy Robinson, the famous British racist, leader of those recent England flag marches, and the guy Elon Musk thinks Lord of the Rings was about for some reason. When Tolkien wrote about the hobbits, he was referring to the gentlefolk of the English shires, who don't realise the horrors that take place far away. They were able to live their lives in peace and tranquility, but only because they were protected by the hard men of Gondor. What happened to the nice man, who was brutally murdered while walking his dog, will happen to all of England if the tide of illegal immigration is not turned. It is time for the English to ally with the hard men, like Tommy Robinson, and fight for their survival, or they shall surely all die. Our Tommy, as the reddest men you've ever seen call him, was revealed to have had the loud and proud support of gold medal nonce finalist Jeffrey Epstein while he yet lived, with Epstein praising Tommy Robinson for his excellent work, and making a number of jokes about the worst crimes of the 20th century in those same correspondences. As well as the new information, though, there's a lot most people don't know even about what was revealed about Epstein and his operation long before the United States Congress started publishing documents, and even before Epstein shuffled off this mortal coil. Or, I guess, was shuffled off? Is it still shuffling off if someone murders you? For example, did you know that one of the first victims to come forward with allegations against Jeffrey Epstein was a trans woman? If you didn't, I wouldn't be surprised, because the story of her abuse and trauma at the hands of the world's most famous child catcher outside of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was turned by the press into a humiliation ritual, where she was outed and made out to be some money-grubbing villain, with Jeffrey Epstein the poor, bamboozled victim.
There was an ever-revolving door of girls.
Somehow, his lawyers had worked out a deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Who else was underage?
In October 2007, a trans Latina woman named Ava Cordderero became one of the first victims of Jeffrey Epstein's international horror show to make public allegations against her abuser. According to LGBTQ Nation, Cordderero, filing her 2007 lawsuit, alleged that in 1999, Epstein lured her to his mansion, undressed and requested a massage. Cordderero said she felt frightened, but agreed, at which point Epstein suddenly began... Actually, let's not finish that quote, because it's horrifying, one, and two, I would get demonetized. Let's instead defer to how the New York Supreme Court described it. Plaintiff commenced an action to recover damages against, among others, Jeffrey Epstein. In that action, plaintiff alleged that Epstein, a wealthy money manager, has exploited plaintiff when she was a minor by requesting both that she perform acts on him and permit him to perform acts on her in exchange for his assistance in helping her obtain a modelling career. The complaint contains graphic allegations regarding the specific acts plaintiff and Epstein allegedly performed. Now, in a just world, when these claims were made, Cordderero would have been, at minimum, given a serious hearing. But even before claims about her being trans were used to try and smear her in the press did what it does best, refusing to believe victims of this kind of violence, especially when it's inconvenient for their narrative. Several days before Cordderero, again according to her lawyers, commenced the action against Epstein, the New York Post ran an outright smear story against her and her allegations. The front page read, "Teen model, my kinky with billionaire, bombshell lawsuit." On page 7 was a picture of her sitting on the lap of former attorney William Unruh, alongside a picture of Epstein. The article did not mention the then pending criminal case against Epstein for soliciting, while the New York Post refused over and over again to mention the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, or even pretend to consider the claims Cordderero was making and how horrifying they were very excited to talk about her being trans. And of course, Cordderero must have been lying to get Epstein's money. He's not gay, he's just a And so the New York Post made sure to publish more smears against Cordderero, with the Times of Israel joining in for good measure. I mean, just have a look at these New York Post headlines. "Genderman shocker. He has a history. Bogus suit." How impartial. Very cool and normal thing to write about a victim of a horrible crime trying to seek justice. It's almost as if the New York Post exists to protect the rich and powerful at the expense of the vast majority of the population. There's obviously a lot of misgendering and dead-naming in here, so warning for that here, or if you want to read the whole article, but the New York Post was convinced the real story here wasn't the man-made horrors beyond my comprehension being perpetrated by their favourite obvious pest Jeffrey Epstein, but the fact that one of the people he'd abused was transgender. The horror! Poor Jeffrey Epstein, having to do his horrible crimes against a tranny. He must have been mortified. I bet he really needed to unpack that in therapy. Better give him more favourable press coverage to make it up for him. A stunning model wannabe, who says she was pressured into a hush-hush affair with billionaire Jeffrey Epstein when she was only 16, has an even bigger secret. She's a man. Maximilia Cordderero, who stepped forward last week with a lawsuit claiming she'd engaged in bizarre and unnatural acts with Epstein while in her teens, was born Maximilian Cordderero in 1983, records show. He was dressing up as a girl by age 12, and has been living as a female since his early teens. Sources close to Cordderero told the Post. Cordderero has had cosmetic work done, and has taken hormone treatments for almost a decade to look more like a woman, the source said. While her suit says she was too disabled as a result of severe mental disease and defect to bring a suit against Epstein earlier than 7 years after he allegedly her, her purported MySpace page indicates that she had been leading a productive life. "I'm currently attending FIT full-time because of modelling to earn my fashion degree," her page says. Epstein's spokesman, Howard Rubenstein, called the revelations shocking and said Corddero's claims of being victimized by Epstein should not be believed. Epstein is expected to plead guilty in the next month for allegedly at his Florida estate. Investigators in Palm Beach had claimed he'd had numerous liaisons with underage and troubled girls there. Rubenstein said that made him an easy target for money-seeking lawyers and their women. Corddero's lawyer, roommate, and ex-boyfriend, William Unruh, 57, denied she's a he. Further articles and allegations within these articles alleged that Cordderero was a liar, and basically accused her of being a crazy addict and a who's also not even a real woman. Which is why they're targeting her with so much obvious misogyny. Cordderero sued the New York Post for its attempts to defame her, accusing the newspaper and its employees of, in her lawyer's words, a vicious smear campaign to R-word a teenage SA victim a second time through a series of malicious false stories in the New York Post and republished throughout the world. The stories falsely claimed as fact that plaintiff age 23, who had filed a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein, claiming that when she was 16, she was SA'd by Epstein, a billionaire serial was a promiscuous liar and transvestite who had lied about being SA'd by Epstein to steal money from him. The New York Post intentionally engaged in this vicious smear campaign to destroy plaintiff's reputation and to discourage other young women from suing Epstein or pursuing criminal charges against him by warning them if they went against Epstein, their reputation and their careers would be destroyed. Despite this being obviously defamatory, despite some of what we now know about Epstein already being whispered about, to the point where it is mentioned in the lawsuit that he has other victims, despite this being a cry for help from a victim of a horrific crime who is suffering, Cordderero lost her suit against the New York Post. Her smears were left to stand, published and out there, and put a stain on her record and her reputation, despite her being the victim. And what's worse is that her lawsuit against Epstein too was dismissed, thanks to Epstein's successful plea that the statute of limitations had passed on his horrific abuse. Pleas that were accepted by the Supreme Court of New York. Epstein's lawyer, speaking to the New York Post journalist who dismissed the suit as a gender-bend shocker and called Cordderero a man, claimed Cordderero was after my client's money, and directly called the victim of his client's violence a monster, and a nice little joke at the expense of the woman he had smeared and kept from justice. It wouldn't surprise me if the next claim was from the Loch Ness Monster. Despite this, however, that year, Epstein was indicted on 60 criminal counts, pleading guilty to 2, registering as a and going to jail. Case solved, right? Well, no. Unfortunately, he would only stay there for 13 months and carried on working. Things only got worse for his victims after, who grew in number. And a lot of the people we already spoke about kept meeting with him, knowing what was going on.
Another Lord Epstein's holiday homes. Yum, yum, that message says.
One of the weirder things about this, and something I really wanted to be careful about, is that it's very hard to actually verify whether Ava Cordderero ever referred to herself as transgender. She claimed she was not in her lawsuit, but her libel case was more focused on claims she was, to put it politely, adventurous, not about the claim that she was trans. What's more, her medical records were not sealed, and were considered in her lawsuit, which was dismissed, and the New York Post claims to have discovered her past through private detectives along with Epstein's lawyers, because they were working together in a cool and normal way that isn't at all an indictment on the entire country of the United States of America. Cordderero claimed that their proof, however, former MySpace pages, were forgeries. However, there is also an unnamed source. Ava Maximilia Cordderero, however, appears to have completely disappeared since. She hasn't kept a public profile, as far as I can tell, and so this is pretty hard to follow up upon. Epstein, however, is famous for blackmailing people. It's sort of his whole thing, and the court dismissal of medical records as proof of the New York Post's lies, and the sources close to Cordderero who told the Post she was trans, do seem to indicate that she was, and that she just didn't want the world to know, which isn't surprising, given this was decades ago, and she was trying to be a model. This is given further weight by the fact that the New York Post initially did not run with this. Their first article was not about being trans. Instead, they threw out the usual smears for a woman accusing a powerful man of this sort of crime, the claims that Cordderero later sued over. Sites all over the internet, from Courthouse News to MSNBC to Pink News to LGBTQ Nation, all also referred to her as a trans woman, as did Eli Ehrlich's post, who alerted a lot of these stories. And those articles are all up unamended. And it was not a safe time to be out as a trans woman when Corddero's lawsuit was filed. Most trans women would aim to go stealth as soon as possible, meaning that once a trans woman started to pass, they would hide their trans identity and history and for all purposes live as a cis woman, not making any indication they might be trans, and hiding in plain sight for their safety. In this way, her being outed as trans would have been extremely dangerous, and would possibly lead her to be targeted for violence. There would have been understandable reasons for Cordderero to deny this in public for her very safety, and for her future, particularly as a model whose job relies on her not being seen as anything but a beautiful cis woman to photograph. For this reason, I also understand that people aren't completely buying her roommate and ex-boyfriend when he denied that she was trans. There is stigma against men who sleep with trans women too. She and those close to her clearly did not want this information to be revealed. She did not want to come out. But it was revealed anyway. In the related court documents to the libel case, medical testimony corroborates the claims and the blackmail the New York Post and Epstein put together, with psychiatrist and lawyer Dr. Robert Goldstein testifying that currently plaintiff has primarily male characteristics, but is desirous of having a sex change operation, which would cost $10,000, and she is saving money in order to have that procedure. Cordderero, understandably, asked for her medical records to be sealed. The court refused to seal them. And so here we are. A woman who has worked hard to build a life after her horrific abuse by Jeffrey Epstein, of all people, and had it completely torn apart and smeared by the man who ruined her life and her friends in power. And that ruin was celebrated in the press, and the victim of this story made a laughingstock. Ava Cordderero was forcibly outed by her abuser and his friends in the New York Post into a world that treated trans women as freaks, only fit for ridicule and violence. How convenient for those who had already ridiculed and done violence to her. In a strange twist of fate, despite the claims by the New York Post and Jeffrey Epstein's team that Cordderero was actually a man, and her womanhood was but a disguise used to trick poor, defenseless millionaire assault demons, this complete monstering of Cordderero is very much in line with how female victims of crimes like these are always treated. Women are, to put it bluntly, often blamed for the actions of those who hurt them. Whether it's blaming someone facing harassment because they showed too much skin, or the hundreds of victims of Harvey Weinstein who were ignored, smeared, and chased out of careers in show business before the Me Too movement emerged. To the post-Me Too claims that call-out culture went too far, and won't someone think of the poor defenseless abusers? Women being abused, them being shamed for being victims of that abuse, and chased out of careers, social circles, and even public life entirely, while the person responsible gets off scot-free, is unfortunately a tale as old as time. Well, wouldn't you know, guess the world really does believe that trans women are women after all, because let me tell you, this case would have turned out very differently if people had truly treated Cordderero like they would have actually treated a man in her situation. You need look no further than the cases of Blake Lively or Amber Heard for more of that too. People are so desperate to defend men who commit violence that they use every little thing, every opportunity to smear women who come forward, as if not being a perfect victim means you deserved what you got. And yet, the entire political spectrum seems to at least pretend to care, at least in rhetoric, about seeking justice for Epstein's victims. A lot of people who would, if this was a simple case of one woman versus a powerful man, tend to take the side of the man no matter what evidence, are not on the side of the man in this case. Perhaps it's the sheer scale of this operation and the number of victims. Perhaps it's the level of abstraction. The charges focused on the abuser, with the victims not being centered in the story as much as perhaps they should be, so people can have some kind of revenge fantasy. Live out that urge for vengeance against people we can all agree are monsters. More of an anti-abuser than a pro-victim attitude. Or perhaps it's because the victims were allegedly almost all underage. And that's definitely worse. But it's not like Republicans haven't voted people like that into office before. Either way, I hope these people can keep the same level of energy of demands for justice for victims of these crimes in the future. Perhaps even for victims that might happen to be transgender. Because a victim is a victim. Cordderero suffered the same crimes as many, many others. She was not any more undeserving of pain than anyone else, nor was she undeserving of justice and a right to live a peaceful life, free from smears and the shadow of her abuser, just because she was trans. Here's to her and to all of the victims. I hope you get the justice you so deeply deserve. Thanks for watching.
Disgraced financier.
The paedophile allegations.
This guy's been talked about for years. Jeffrey Epstein.
Hey, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you like this video, give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe, tell your friends about it, click a hype if you can. I don't have that here, but apparently I've seen hypes. People can do it, I guess. I don't know how it works. I'm very confused about it. I'm confused about YouTube in general right now, actually, because everyone's views seem to be down and money's... I don't know what the fuck is happening. Fix your shit, YouTube. Jesus Christ. In the meantime, if they haven't fixed their shit yet, which they haven't at the time of recording, you can give me money, because I don't have that and I would like some. You can help me by giving one-time donations on Coffee or PayPal. Links below as always. Or sign up to my Patreon or YouTube memberships where you get occasional early videos, you'll get access to the members-only Discord, you'll get my Nintendo Switch friend code, and you'll get exclusive content such as long-form interviews with people who I have interviewed in the past, including Princess Weeks, Rosenkreutz, Jessie Gender, more to come with any luck. In addition to all that good stuff, you'll also get your name read out at the end of each video, just like these lovely people. Ken Sorden, Andrew Steele, Georgie, Carlito del Mozzotte, Anna Nicholson, Dungeon Slime, Naomi Gorman, Melody, Ben Norman, Brooke Linnett, Heidi Law, Transform and Function, Cara Patching, Mattia98, Zoffrey, Lilith Dawn, Spin Noir, Victor Lofgren, Gil the Gilded Dragon, A Slice of Cake, Rue, Kauai Esquire, Charlie Hallam, Buried Elk, Ewan Bennett, Bags, Mao TM, Gina Service, You Are Made Off Stupid, Tomo, Melissa Jackson, Ren approves of your stuff, thanks Ren, Minstrel of course, Jeffreyon, Tom the Not Quite So Brave as Sir Lancelot, LFR, Tricoi, Ariella, Proquar, Robin Thomas, Emily Eisenberg, Kathy 1410 Itchy, Garlic Scape, Kira B, No Sparkling Heart, Corey, Gianna J, Mightier Than the Sword, Carolyn, Imogen Q, Luciano Frias Andrade, Adam, Harry, Ndog191, Cav, Quesadilla de Tortilla Azul, Liron, Adam Lees, Daniel Nevels, no not that Paul, MB, Wondering Wonder, Ash Murphy, Lex Phoenix, Enter Kurzitz, Mira D, Jade Senior, Boa Ear, James W, Thorngill, Deborah Laboon, Zilla's Athenaeum, Vince Whitaker, Amelia Lissette, Jason Haig, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helene Real, Sierra Whiskey, Ali Catgill, John N, Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Shield Laden, Robin Podolsky, Nightlight, Plushy Jesus, Casual Observer, Manta Ray, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philippa Tabroga, Soma Piglet, Brain Douche, Artie Wolf, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lilly, PJ Lisbrel, Howard Lott, Narania, Eva Kebab, Marty Hunt, Robert McCallan, Jade Lee Safarian, Melissa Allen, Ataraxis Builds Things, Sarah Francesca Smith. Thank you all so much. Thank you for continuing to support me. It means a lot. This move has been painful. I am sad. I don't want to be in my parents' attic. Help me get out with money so I can get my own place. Yeah, love you. Thank you for your kind words in this hard time. A lot of people have been super, super nice in ways that I could not comprehend in the past that people could be. I'm just so grateful for everyone and for your love and support. And thank you. Keep on watching. Feels weird to be doing this here, doesn't it? Welcome to Nottingham. You and me, I guess. Not as good a space for filming this necessarily, but hopefully you don't mind. Can't really help it.
Disgraced financier.
The paedophile allegations.
This guy's been talked about for years. Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey, it's hailing. Jeffrey, the black clouds are rolling in, Jeffrey.